In the sprawling cosmos of the Galactic Concord, where species of every stripe vied for supremacy, the human warrior Torren Kane was a name whispered with disdain. The Concord's elite, the sleek and telepathic Voryn, ruled the council chambers with their crystalline voices and superior intellect. To them, humans were crude, barely civilized, an upstart species from a backwater planet called Earth. Torren, with his scarred armor and blunt demeanor, was the epitome of everything they despised. Lirien, a young Voryn Prodigy, was particularly vocal in her contempt. Her silver eyes gleamed with arrogance as she addressed the Concord assembly, her voice slicing through the murmurs. This human, Torren Kane, dares to claim a seat among us? He's a brute, a relic of primal wars, unfit for the Concord's enlightened discourse. The chamber erupted in agreement, the Voryn's telepathic chorus amplifying their scorn. Torren, standing at the edge of the hall, merely adjusted his battered gauntlets, his face unreadable. Lirien's mother, High Matriarch Silvara, watched from her elevated throne. Her expression was unreadable, but her mind pulsed with a quiet unease. She had seen humans fight, seen Torren fight, decades ago, when the Concord faced the Kroth invasion. His raw courage had turned the tide, though the Voryn refused to acknowledge it. Silvara's silence was a calculated choice, one Lirien mistook for agreement. That evening, at a grand Concord banquet, Lirien sought Torren out. She found him in a corner, nursing a drink that smelled of Earth's grain fields. His armor was scuffed, his dark hair streaked with gray, yet his presence carried a weight that unnerved her. "Warrior," she said, her tone dripping with mockery, "do you truly believe you belong here? You, who wield swords while we shape minds." Torren's gray eyes met hers. "I belong where I'm needed," he said simply. His voice was low, steady, like the rumble of a distant storm. Lirien laughed, a crystalline sound that drew eyes. "Needed? You're a curiosity, nothing more. A human playing at power." She expected him to bristle, to argue. Instead, he took a slow sip of his drink and said, "Mock all you want, kid. I've faced worse than words." His calm infuriated her. She stormed away, vowing to prove his irrelevance. The next day, the Concord received dire news. A rogue faction of Kroth had resurfaced, attacking outposts along the rim. Their bioengineered warships, pulsing with organic menace, were unlike anything the Concord had faced before. The assembly debated endlessly, their telepathic arguments a cacophony of indecision. Lirien proposed a diplomatic envoy, believing the Kroth could be reasoned with. The others nodded, enamored with her eloquence. Torren, however, stood. "You're wrong," he said, his voice cutting through the mental din. "The Kroth don't negotiate. They consume. I've fought them. You send envoys, you send corpses." Lirien scoffed, her silver eyes flashing. "And what would you suggest, human? More violence?" "If it saves lives, yes." His bluntness stunned the chamber. The Voryn hissed their disapproval, but Silvara raised a hand, silencing them. "Speak, Torren Kane," she said. "What do you propose?" He outlined a plan, a small elite strike force to infiltrate the Kroth's flagship and disable its hive mind core. It was risky, borderline suicidal, but Torren's confidence was unshakable. Lirien laughed outright. "You led a mission. You'd sooner trip over your own ego." The assembly chuckled, but Silvara's eyes narrowed. "Enough," she said. "Torren will lead the mission. Lirien, you will join him." Lirien's outrage was palpable, but Silvara's command was law. The team assembled, Torren, Lirien, and a handful of Concord operatives from various species. They boarded a stealth cruiser, the Voidlance, and set course for the rim. Lirien kept her distance, her telepathic disdain a constant pressure in Torren's mind. He ignored it, focusing on the mission. The Kroth flagship loomed like a living nightmare, its hull writhing with tendrils. The team infiltrated through a maintenance vent, moving silently through corridors that pulsed with bioluminescent light. Torren took point, his human senses, lacking telepathy but honed by years of survival, alert to every sound. Lirien, grudgingly, followed. They reached the core chamber, a cavernous space dominated by a pulsating organic mass. The Kroth guards, insectoid and relentless, swarmed. Torren fought with brutal efficiency, his plasma blade carving through exoskeletons. Lirien, wielding her telepathic abilities, disoriented the enemy, but her inexperience showed. A Kroth lunged, she froze. Torren tackled her out of the way, taking a claw to his shoulder. Blood seeped through his armor, but he didn't falter. "Move!" he barked, shoving her toward the core. Lirien, shaken, focused her mind, disabling the core's defenses long enough for Torren to plant the disruptor. The chamber shook as the hive mind faltered, the Kroth collapsing in disarray. The team barely escaped before the flagship imploded. Back on the Voidlance, Lirien's anger boiled over. "You reckless fool! You could have gotten us killed." Torren, bandaging his wound, didn't look up. "You're welcome," he said dryly. Her silver eyes burned, but she said nothing, retreating to her quarters. The mission's success stunned the Concord. Torren's plan had saved countless lives, and even the Voryn couldn't deny it. Lirien, however, refused to acknowledge him. She returned to her mother's side, expecting praise for her role. Instead, Silvara summoned her to a private chamber, Torren already present. "Lirien," Silvara began, her voice heavy, "you've mocked this man, dismissed him as lesser. But there's something you must know." Lirien frowned, sensing her mother's unease. Silvara's eyes, usually so composed, flickered with something like regret. "Torren Kane is your father." The words hit like a supernova. Lirien's telepathic defenses collapsed, her mind reeling. "Impossible," she whispered. "You're Voryn. He's human." Silvara's gaze softened. "Decades ago, during the First Kroth War, I fought alongside Torren. He saved my life, and in those moments, we grew close. You were born of that bond, a secret I kept to protect you from the Concord's prejudice." Torren stood silent, his face etched with old pain. Lirien's eyes darted between them, her world unraveling. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demanded. Silvara sighed. "I wanted you to rise among the Voryn, untainted by human stigma. But I was wrong to hide the truth. Torren's strength, his courage, it's in you, whether you accept it or not." Lirien turned to Torren, her voice trembling. "You knew." He nodded. "Since you were a kid. I stayed away because your mother thought it best. Didn't stop me from watching out for you." His words were steady, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of hope. She wanted to scream, to reject it all, but the mission flashed in her mind. Torren's blade, his blood, his unshakable resolve. He wasn't just a brute. He was her father. The realization cracked her arrogance like glass. Over the following weeks, Lirien grappled with her identity. She sought Torren out, not for apologies but for understanding. They trained together, his human grit tempering her Voryn precision. Slowly, she saw what the Concord refused to. Humanity's strength wasn't in telepathy or elegance, but in their refusal to break. At the next assembly, Lirien stood before the Concord, her silver eyes steady. "Torren Kane deserves a seat here," she declared. "Not because he's human, but because he's proven what we Voryn often forget. Courage isn't measured by species, but by action." The chamber was silent, then erupted in debate. Silvara watched, pride mingling with relief. Torren took his seat, his armor still scarred, his gaze still steady. Lirien sat beside him, no longer mocking but learning. The Concord would never be the same, and neither would she. In the stars beyond, the galaxy waited, vast and unforgiving, but for the first time, Lirien felt ready, because she carried the strength of both her worlds.